Service lunch while we're here.
Okay, first, let me well, before Mandy comes up, I want to talk to you guys about a few different things that, one, I want you to make you aware of. Mandy's gonna go over the inventory tax, ad valorem tax with you guys, a decision that you're gonna have to make. But I wanna really make sure I highlight that we are working behind the scenes with Mandy on a few different things, and I want you guys to hear it because it's gonna be coming to you in the spring. We in Lafayette Parish have lots of property, and property that is being formed by people and so on and so forth. We have been approached, I have been in touch with our board members in that particular area about commercializing and doing certain things on the south side, because around Southside High School, there's over 600 acres that are owned by us. That is the school board. Like, we farm it out, we do whatever. Part of that is on Shimonettery, looking at doing something where we cannot sell that land because it is 16 section land. Having you guys enter in an agreement with whoever, and we would lease, we would even put in there something as far as different things that you guys would want, but it's a way to actually get more revenue into our district. Like, we're actually farming and doing things, and we're getting very little from that, where we could actually do a better job. And I don't know why we've never pushed into that realm, but we are gonna be bringing something to you guys so we can say that, hey, we will get more money out of this, and we're gonna be doing that. Mandy, in her role, has been very instrumental in helping us that, to where we're gonna market those properties statewide, as Mandy would say, put them on steroids, make sure that everybody knows, and really try to draw businesses into that area. So I want you to know that that is gonna be coming. We're working with Mr. Adal, we're working with some of you guys on that. We're gonna make sure that that is a piece. But just recently, myself, Matt, and Anthony went to a presentation Mr. Centini and Mandy put on for all of the three entities that have to make this decision as far as the ad valorem tax. And if there's anything that I can tell you, Mandy, in her presentation, she really gets to the point. It's real, it's very, you guys are gonna have a clear understanding of what decision we have to make. And I'm just hoping that as the mayor president and Sheriff Barber, you guys are the third entity that has to make a decision, that we can all come to a consensus and we can make a decision, because one cannot do without the others. We all have to be. I'm going to turn it over to Mandy. Mandy, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for being a part of this. And by all means, guys, this lady right here has been a jewel. She is also, let me tell you, I can't say enough, she's actually doing some things around STEM. And she is promoting things around, and she's kind of helping us and giving us money. And look, I'm just so thankful for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here with all of you. So, Mr. Chairman, how much time do you want me to take?
We're gonna have a working lunch, so go ahead and go to like 12:30,
Okay.
12:45.
Okay.
We're gonna start serving ourselves during your presentation. People will start serving themselves.
Perfect. Okay. Well, it is great to be here today. For those who don't know, I'm the president CEO at LEDA. After about 10 years at the State Department of Economic Development, #2 person there during that time. And so I'm a Lafayette native, and I am a very, very proud product of public schools, Alice Boucher, MP Moss, and Northside High School. So anytime I'm talking to educators, or anyone to do with our school system, I like to make sure people know where I come from. So we have had the pleasure to work with the school system on a number of initiatives. So LEDA is really, we are tasked with growing our economy in Lafayette Parish. We do that through a number of different ways. We try to recruit new businesses to come to the community. We work with our existing businesses on their expansions, and honestly, that's 80% of the work we do, although that's not what makes it to the news. The fancy new shiny stuff makes it to the news, but we spend more than 80% of our time with our existing businesses. Beyond that, we focus on workforce development, and with the evolution of economic development over time, we have sort of blurred the lines between economic and workforce development, and guess what? The lines are now blurred in that workforce development doesn't just start and end at the collegiate level or post-secondary. We have to reach back into K-12. And so that is through partnerships. And so one of the things for Lafayette that we have determined to focus on to continue diversifying our economic base, which, as you know, in the early 1900s, it was just oil and gas. Those days have come and gone. So we have been intentional about diversifying our economic base, and one of those things that we've been doing intentionally, working with the university and now with the school system, is to focus on STEM. And so we've had a number of STEM partnerships with the school system. We're very proud of that, and we want to keep that going. Because what is that doing is giving our young people a competitive advantage. Whether they want to go be an engineer or a scientist or not, having that exposure to STEM is critical. And so we're excited about the partnership and Mr. Touche, Dr. Robley, the rest of the team being open to partnering with LEADA on things like that. In addition to partnerships on the workforce development continuum, we are partnering with property owners all across the parish. One of the competitive advantages for any community to continue to grow is to identify sites that are development ready. And that's a bunch of economic development jargon that says sites that are ready to be sold, to put into commerce so that they can generate new jobs, generate capital investment, generate sales taxes, property taxes. And so that is something that across the entire state of Louisiana, economic developers are focused on. Lafayette, we're not going to get left behind. In fact, we're going to be in the forefront. We just wrapped up a partnership with a consultant that helped us identify 28 potential development-ready sites. So now we have a process to walk through with those. Prior to that, though, I had the opportunity to sit down with one of our mayors and Mr. Touchette to talk about this initiative and for there to be a discussion. Are there parcels of property that are not going to be used by the school system that could be put into commerce? Are there properties we don't need? And what happens there is we enter into a partnership to make sure those sites are ready for development, meaning no environmental issues, the infrastructure's there, they're along a major thoroughfare. Once we check all those boxes with the state, we designate it as a state certified site, and from there, we market that like crazy across the entire United States. There are people all day, every day, what they do is they wake up, and for large corporations, they look for developable sites. So anyway, I just wanted to say those few things, and really just to say thank y'all. The state, as you all know, new governor, new revenue secretary, new secretary of the Department of Economic Development. The three of them put their heads together to talk with some of us, some economic developers around the state, to talk about what are some things that can be done to improve our state's economic competitiveness. We are tired of seeing our talent leave Louisiana. And the number one reason we're hearing that people, especially young people, are leaving is for job opportunities. The perception is that we don't have good quality job opportunities in Louisiana. So number one, we got to change the perception, right? There's a bunch of other things we have to address, but there are real things that stand in the way of being able to attract and help our existing businesses to grow. Tax reform was a central theme in the special session that happened at the beginning of the year, or last summer, a couple months ago. And coming from 10 years-ish at the state level, I lived through the 3 previous attempts at meaningful tax reform. Lived through. And finally, this go round, we were able to make some progress. And there's a lot of, a ton of changes, as you all know. But from a business perspective, one of the most important things that we could do to improve our competitiveness is to simplify our tax code. In our tax code, we have a high tax rate for both individuals and businesses, but then we have a ton of tax credits that you have to know somebody who can help you understand how to use this tax credit to reduce your tax burden. And that is where Louisiana has lost a number of projects to other states, because sometimes they look and say, complicated tax code, relatively high cost of doing business, I'm out. And so just from a business perspective, the inventory tax, I'll get into this in a minute, the other states, the other few states that have an inventory tax. It is a tax on a business whether they're profitable or not. So, if you're doing sales taxes, the more you sell, the more taxes you extract from your customers, and then you pass that along to the governmental entities. Corporate income tax, the more income you make, the more that's taxable. Inventory tax, whether or not a business lost their shirt or not, an inventory tax is imposed on them. So Governor Landry and his top lieutenants in economic development and revenue set on a pathway not just to eliminate the inventory tax, but also the franchise tax, another unbusiness-friendly tax. So I'm not going to bore y'all to death. I think everybody in here knows what LEDA's about. At the end of the day, we want to make sure Lafayette is a location of choice for our own homegrown talent and for businesses from across the globe. I want to highlight just our target industries. Obviously, from an energy industry perspective, it's oil and gas and other forms of energy. Our neighbor right next door just landed $1 billion solar panel manufacturing plant. We're going to get some of the spin-off from that project as an example. So we have intentionally broadened our terminology. We're talking to a company that does hydrogen energy. So those are things of those nature. So it's all field services and beyond. Healthcare, tech, manufacturing, aviation, aerospace, logistics, transportation, and warehousing. We're at the intersection of I-10 and I-49. We're going to capitalize on that. And that's partly how we got to Amazon to come to I-49. And then lastly, retail and family entertainment. These are the target industries that we wake up every day in LEDA and we're focused on. Why? Because they pay very good wages and they provide health benefits to their employees. And the companies that are here, that are in these different industries, are part of the fabric of our community. And then lastly, we're a college town and we have a ton of young people across our communities and we want them to stay. So we want them to have fun. So we focus on retail and entertainment. But I wanted to highlight these industries because many of them carry significant amounts of inventory. So Lafayette is one of the top 10 parishes when it comes to inventory tax collection. Ad valorem taxes, the last iteration of the way they are at the state level, have been around since '74. The state basically put a Band-Aid on the situation to try and improve our competitiveness on the inventory tax. It is imposed at the local level. Local governments collect, right? The state then, in 1991, created a tax credit. So basically, businesses who pay the inventory tax could then come and seek a tax credit from the state. And the effort there was to try and offset this burden, this uncompetitive tax burden. There were a couple of attempts over the years to try and eliminate the inventory tax. We all know Senator Alain. He made the most recent significant attempt, spent an entire summer with representatives from municipalities, school system, police juries, private industry, state government, list goes on, retailers, different wholesalers, manufacturers that carry a bunch of inventory, spent an entire summer, and at the end was not able to come to something that everyone could agree to on how to unwind ourselves off of the inventory tax in Louisiana. But a lot of data and information came from that summer-long exercise. So it's the credit itself cost the state about $285 million. So if you're a state and you're basically offsetting this uncompetitive tax by providing this tax credit just to improve your competitiveness, that is literally a Band-Aid on a really bad situation. So with the governor and Revenue Secretary, Economic Development Secretary looked at a number of other states, looked at experts like the Tax Foundation that have explored state tax codes for a number of years and run comparisons. And the determination, and furthermore, the state also looked at a number of different initiatives to improve our business competitiveness. Among those was lowering the corporate income tax. Hopefully, maybe one day we might get down really low, but the highest rate for corporate income tax was 7.5%. We were able to get it down to 5.5%, and then lowering and flattening individual income taxes. Now, when you do that, you then take revenues at the state level off the table. So now you have to start looking at expenses and get those off the table. And the inventory tax credit is one of those that if they're saying if we're going to simplify our tax code for businesses and reduce corporate income taxes, we're also getting rid of this tax credit. What that does at the local level then is it leaves local government with a decision to decide, do we continue to impose the inventory tax or not? Now, I'm going to share some information about some details in a minute. And by the way, Assessor Centani couldn't make it today. His son had a doctor's appointment, but typically we kind of tag team on this, but I do have his information, the data. But in Lafayette, last year we collected $27 million in inventory taxes, and that's across all of our taxing bodies for which inventory tax is allowed. So Louisiana is one of only 14 states that impose the inventory tax, right? Again, I talked about this before, whether or not the company's profitable, they gotta pay up. You got inventory, you gotta pay it. It disproportionately affects those that carry heavy inventory, which tend to be those businesses that have the highest number of jobs and that pay the higher end of the wages. So we're penalizing employers that provide quality jobs. So again, just looking at the entire system with the taxes on inventory, the tax credit coming in 1991 costing the state a good bit of money and making us uncompetitive, folded into House Bill 7, which is going to be the constitutional amendment on the ballot for all voters to decide in Julie Emerson's legislation, is the approval to allow local governments to decide if you want to continue imposing the inventory tax or not. So the state, whether or not that happens, is getting out of the game. Come July 2026, the state will no longer provide an inventory tax credit. So in Lafayette, the mixture in who pays property taxes and inventory taxes, commercial and residential nearly 50-50, industrial's a little bit lower at 5.9%. And that's just the mix of the makeup of the types of properties we have in Lafayette Parish. Obviously, for me selfishly, I would like to see more industrial properties. Again, that's manufacturers, that's aerospace companies, you name it. And those types of industries pay very good wages, and it's your knowledge economy workers. So the thinking is, from a competitiveness standpoint, if we did not impose an inventory tax, we would truly open ourselves up for more business investment, and you would see a better mixture, and potentially residential would carry less of the share. Opportunities for business attraction and job growth. These are some numbers our data team ran on the potential economic impact if in Lafayette Parish we were to be able to find a way to unwind ourselves from the inventory tax. Private sector could directly hire nearly 400 more people at $80,000 per year and result in an annual economic impact of over $200 million. We would see a nice bump to our parish GDP. And again, we were just sitting around running analyses on different numbers that if we didn't have the inventory tax. From a population growth opportunity, this is really important. From the last two censuses, most of the state lost population. Lafayette is one of a few parishes that did not. And we want to keep that trend going. And one of the ways to do that is to retain your current population, retain your talent, but also continue attracting more jobs so that people have a reason to want to stay in your parish. And so I really like this illustration of how Lafayette Parish is one of a few in the state that did not lose population. Now, I'm going to also share with you some really important numbers when it comes to our parish and the inventory tax. All right, here we go. So there we go. So in Lafayette Parish, this is the breakdown of taxable value, the inventory taxable value, and the revenue. So in Lafayette Parish, inventory tax accounts for roughly 9.7% of property tax collections. And so for the school system, that revenue is about $9.8 million per year from inventory taxes. For the parish, it's about $6 million, and then for the sheriff, about 4.8. And then you have our municipalities here. So, as I previously mentioned, the state is eliminating and unwinding itself from the inventory tax credit. Where that is going to leave parishes, all 64 of us, is to decide. Or are you going to continue imposing the inventory tax, or are you going to phase it out or eliminate it if feasible? So the mechanics of that, the way it's set up in the law, in the constitutional amendment, the school board, the parish, and the sheriff, those three governing entities must agree unanimously, thumbs up or thumbs down, to proceed with imposing inventory tax or to phase out the inventory tax. When the decision is made, these three bodies have to decide, is it going to be immediate at whatever point in time it's decided, or is it going to be over a phased out period, a phased out time frame, not to exceed 5 years. And then once the decision has been made, if in fact it is to decide we no longer want to impose an inventory tax, it's irrevocable, so we can't come back and then change that and impose an inventory tax again. So if the decision is made prior to July 2026, the legislature has put in place some incentives which a group of us are trying to get this information, these incentives increased. But right now, if you make an immediate decision, pick a date in time and decide after fiscal year so-and-so, we're no longer going to impose an inventory tax, you get a one-time payout of $15 million. If you decide to phase it out, it's $10 million. And again, if a local entity waits until after July 2026, there's no incentive on the table any longer from the state. So this all was part of the special session on tax reform that happened last fall.
So Mandy, could you go back to that slide? Of the $15 million is what is standing right now, right? As far as the three entities, what would be a portion that Lafayette Parish?
The exact same portion you receive of the inventory tax today. Same formula.
So that's percentage.
The percent, 9.69%.
So what is it now?
5.4 million, I believe.
So we would just get 5.4 million, and what we're trying to do is go back to the legislature and seeing if that 15 million, we could get that up to where at least we'd have some time to phase in,
Yes.
that approach. So 15 million right now, we would hope that we would get more, because some people are not gonna take this and they're gonna leave that money on the table, and we're hoping to take it.
Remind us what our current intake is.
9.7.
So we would only get 5, so we're about 4 million
Yeah.
short.
1 year.
One year.
Yeah.
1 year.
Yes.
What you do in the other 2 years?
There's some.
2 years.
Let me share this too. So this also needs to be taken into account. This is the growth in assessed values over the last several years. So in 2022, from the prior year, we saw 8.6% growth in assessed values. Growth. This, again, remember the map, the geographic map, Lafayette, the blue bubble. We're fortunate that we're still growing. From 22 to 23, 8.6%. Go to reassessment year 24, a whopping 9.4%. Too bad the legislature didn't do this before one of these years, because it would have overlapped and washed itself out. However, we're here where we are, and so you have to factor in the growth. Couple other things that Justin shared whenever he articulates this. We have a number of big developments that are not yet on the tax rolls. Costco is at the very end. That entire development is at the very end of its pilot agreement.
$160 million.
Costco, Buc-ee's, they're not on yet. There are several that are not on the tax rolls yet. So there are things to keep in mind and weigh as you contemplate your decision on, keep it, wait with it, do it immediately, phase it out.
So Mandy,
Mhm.
go back to Costco.
Yep.
What year will it sunset?
The end of this year is the end of 2025 is the last year of their pilot.
So it's going to back to the 2026.
Yes.
And I think Justin, am I right, Hannah and Holly, didn't he say that would mean an extra $800,000 just for Lafayette Parish?
Don't quote me on
Like
that.
almost $1 million.
Yeah, almost $1 million.
And then
I'll
the other
get back to
The other
you.
one you mentioned, there we
Yeah,
have
what I'm
3
saying is that
apartment
that's what he
complexes
projected,
being
that by
built.
itself would be-
Yes.
The Buc-ee's and then
Yep.
whatever you have in the
So again, these are the potential paths forward. Again, leave things as they are. So no exemption on inventory tax, an immediate exemption, or a phased-in exemption under either two if our parish wants an incentive from the state, the decision has to be made before July 1, 2026. Okay? If there's going to be, any changes
Is the
made.
goal for the law 3 times coverage?
Say again?
What, in the goal, the
So-
goal of the law 3 times coverage?
So the way it's written in the legislature, in the legislation, it is actually, the incentive is written such that any local government that decides to immediately eliminate the inventory tax will get 3 times a single year's annual collection, subject to a cap of 15 million. So I think when they saw that number, I think they had a little sticker shock and perhaps put a cap on it. There are a couple of things that I will share. Even the parishes that collect a very little amount, some of them under the formula, because the minimum is $1 million. For any parish that decides to get out, to eliminate the inventory tax, there are some parishes that don't collect anywhere near $1 million.
And 100,000, and they're getting 10 times.
And so there are some things that in this upcoming fiscal session, we believe the legislature is going to revisit about the incentive structure, about the way the incentive structure is set up for local governments, to make a much better decision about do we stay in the inventory tax or not. I mentioned that LAC is in the top 10. Those top 10 range from about 60 million per year in collections down to the 20 million range. And we're in that top 10. But there is a cluster of parishes that have heavy industry, the river parishes, East Baton Rouge, West Baton Rouge, that they're way up there. And they're trying to figure out, is there a way for them to unwind? And for some of them, it's 30% of their parish budget. So they're trying to contemplate how to unwind. So our parish would not be alone if we were to go back to the legislature and say, we need a bit more revenue to be incentivized to eliminate the inventory tax and give us a bridge until the next reassessment. So
Basically, we need 60, and they're offering 50.
they're offering 15, and it would be ideal if we would get 81.
81.
So we have been communicating with our legislators. We're fortunate to have legislators from our area in very key places, and they're all ears. They want to hear from us, not just on this issue, on all issues. But anyway, we just wanted to share this information with you. Personally, I feel your pain. I know you all have some challenges from a budget perspective, and we're sorry to have to present this information at this time, but we felt it would be irresponsible if we did not come and share with you all what we have learned from the legislature.
Yeah, so I'll give you a silver lining too. So if they can float us for 3 years, the state can give us that money to float us for 3 years. When the next assessment comes, based on the way we move property taxes are, we should be level. We should be back to normal operating. That's not counting Costco and everything else. We should be back to normal level.
If we roll forward the mill.
If we roll forward, we'll just there. So 3 years float us, we can get rid of it. In 3 years, we'll be back to our spending levels again. Normal spending.
81.
Yes, I think they're $81 million. Yes.
Do you have any idea on the, I guess have you done this presentation with the other 2 bodies and have received any feedback or any budget concerns from there?
I have not had the opportunity to be with all parish councilmen yet, but the ones we have spoken to have indicated being interested in eliminating the inventory tax, and the sheriff as well. I mean, some of our largest employers are, I'm not saying names, but some of our largest employers are also the most civically engaged, and like they open up their pocketbooks to support initiatives in the community. And so, And not just from that perspective, from a competitiveness perspective, both in the medium and the long term. So a number of parishes are gonna do away with it, smaller parishes. Because, I mean, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
If you collect 200, 300, 400,000 and the incentive's $1 million, you know? And so, there are gonna be a handful of parishes left to figure out how now do we articulate that we're a good place to do business when many parishes around us don't impose this tax, and then many other states don't.
Yeah.
So, I'm just a messenger.
Do you have the numbers for, like, what are the largest employers in Lafayette Parish? Like, in terms of, like, you know, I know a lot of our energy companies have their yards here and have
Yeah.
equipment and that sort of thing. Like, what would be I know you went over the previous meetings on had, but for everyone here to understand, like, what would be the impact if, you know, our top 20 energy companies said, okay, Lafayette Parish kept their inventory tax. We're just gonna go 1 mile down the
You never
road,
know.
across the
Yeah.
parish line and go.
Create a warehouse and store the
Put all the
inventory. I mean,
warehouse
you never know. I mean,
Could you talk about like that sort of
yeah, I mean,
downfall?
yeah, there's a potential that if neighboring parishes around us do away with it and we don't, then we do see over time a gradual shift in where employers choose to have their inventory located. So, and I mean it's one of many scenarios that could happen.
You guys need to say billions of dollars in inventory tax. That would be like, hey, I can have a $2 to $3 billion increase because I moved to a parish that doesn't have inventory tax. They're moving. Like, it's gonna happen.
So the state balanced their budget on the backs of the locals, basically. They got rid of their inventory tax and put it on us. So
I
basically-
wouldn't say that, because since 1991, the state's been doing us a favor. I kind of look at it that way.
But that balances their budget. They can cut.
Well, partly. I mean, it's something that has Louisiana, our ranking, before any tax reforms took place, we ranked 40th. Just from a tax competitiveness perspective, which companies look at a number of factors when they make location decisions. They look at your workforce, they look at your quality of life, your education system, your infrastructure. They look at all of that, but they also look at cost competitiveness. We were ranked 40 from a tax competitive perspective. With the proposed changes, we're going to bump up to 26, and we could even go even higher. But what the state was doing in 1991, they said, hey, like, we're uncompetitive, so we gotta do something. We're not gonna take revenue away from the locals because we can't figure out how to do it. So in 1991, they said, well, I guess they had a lot of cash back then, so then we'll just give the companies 100% tax credit. So, and then when the budget situation got really tight on the state, 2016 and then subsequent years, they have been whittling that credit down. So I think, honestly, the credit is down to like 75% now. So it was bound to happen at some point. So I don't know if I would use the.
No, they've been subsidizing our tax, and
Yeah.
now they're pulling a subsidy. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Just in that, in that regard.
When I look at some of our largest employers in Lafayette, they're only here because those people from Lafayette, they don't want to leave. And I just think we've got to do something to attract more outside business. I think you're doing a good job with that. But when I think about like some of the probably the 8 biggest businesses, if they didn't love Lafayette so much, they would have left.
Yeah.
They were
Or if
for
they
a more
were
competitive
retired.
environment. Yeah.
Or when they retire and sell their
There's some
company.
other companies, their companies are being sold to.
Hopefully those people keep it in Lafayette. I mean, you never know.
Yeah.
I'm not here to try to sway y'all one way or the other. I really wanted to deliver the data, the information, Justin and I both, at least share with y'all from the perspective of the person responsible for marketing Lafayette Parish as a good place to do business, hence a good place to create jobs for our people. So, I think that's all I've got. Mr. Duchette, Dr. Robley, Matt, they all know how to get Amy, Josh, everybody knows how to get a hold of me. So if you all have follow-up questions, or if you want a one-on-one and go a little deeper dive, I will make myself available. Please know, we are continuing to communicate with the members of our legislative delegation about this issue. Because we just don't think it's feasible with $15 million. We just don't think it's feasible, and we also don't think it's fair. So we are continuing to communicate, and if y'all have relationships, communicate with them as well, because we are. So I'll let y'all go to lunch. Thank y'all.
Let me find that, what was it?
Yes, it's a fiscal, so it's all about tax reform. They're gonna come back.